Hey all, here at OS Reviews, you're watching our revisited review of the Essential phone in 2019. This phone is now almost 2 years old. It was released in August of 2017, and back then it received sharp criticism for the expensive price. It sold for over $700, which put it squarely against the latest iPhones and Samsung Galaxies, which were arguably more polished due to a number of years of experience those companies had, versus Essential, which was just a new kid on the block at the time, led by Andy Rubin, and B, the camera performance, which wasn't quite up to snuff compared to the aforementioned flagship competitors from Samsung and Apple. But to Essential's credit, the company never really gave up and consistently pushed software updates to the phone, which to the past few years have actually improved the camera performance quite a bit, not to mention that you have the ability to run the latest edition of Android OS, currently on Android 9.0 Pie, with even promised software updates to the next generation of Android whenever that becomes available. In fact, out of the Pixel line, I would say that the Essential phone has the most consistent and regular software and security updates I've ever seen from any device, which is just incredibly rare in the world of Android, and one of the strongest reasons, in my opinion, to still pick one up today. Now in 2019, the price is lower than ever. You can find one on Amazon or eBay for around $150 unlocked, which is just incredibly low cost for a phone that still packs very impressive hardware that definitely bests other budget phones that you'll find for the same price. So starting with the design of the handset, again, the Essential phone definitely was beautiful even when it first came out. In fact, I'd say it was ahead of its time. It has one of the smallest notches that you'll find even in today's current generation of smartphones. Now taking a closer look on the top, there's actually proximity light sensors integrated into the notch, and you'll also find the presence of a very small earpiece along with a LED charging status light, which are built into this tiny little slit. The phone also feels incredibly hefty in the hand thanks to the use of a titanium frame, which is much stronger than aluminum alloy. It is extremely reflective and glossy, and integrated into the titanium are the antenna bands to Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth 5.0 connectivity. On the bottom, you'll find access to a USB Type-C port, which supports quick charging, one loudspeaker, and the nano SIM card slot. Now, just like many devices today, there is no 3.5mm headphone jack, which is a little bit disappointing. All the keys and buttons are extremely tactile and responsive. Finally, on the back, you'll find an extremely reflective surface, which may look like glass on first impression, but it's actually made out of ceramic. The ceramic build makes the phone a bit more hefty than glass, but also makes it less prone to scratching. In fact, after again 2 years of use, it remains free from any scratches or scruffs, which glass would have had by now. The downside is it's also very glossy and attracts fingerprints like crazy. Also on the rear, you'll find access to a fingerprint scanner, which works pretty well. You'll find 13 megapixel dual cameras, the first which is RGB and second which is monochrome, duotone LED flash assisted laser autofocus, and also 2 tiny contacts which are meant for module accessories. Although the display measures 5.71 inches diagonally, it feels like you're holding a 5-inch phone. In fact, for the sake of comparison, here is, say, an HTC A9, the same size as the original Google Pixel, and you can tell how this phone is even larger despite the fact that its display is significantly smaller. The one device that comes pretty close in terms of giving us also a super premium build and a very professional, futuristic look would be the Smartisan Nut Pro 2 that I did a review on a few months back, along with very strong industrial design like an oversized fingerprint scanner and a camera array free from any additional logos. It's safe to say that the design of the Essential phone has held up to the test of time and remains extremely gorgeous to look at. Now diving a little deeper into the specifications, even in 2019, this is still a very powerful phone. We're talking about a 2K display. It is using IPS LCD technology as opposed to, say, Samsung's AMOLED. However, it still offers very vibrant and punchy looking colors. You'll also find the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset, which is the same one found on the Samsung Galaxy S8, for example, and still very much powerful and capable even for relatively heavy applications and games, and it has 128 gigabytes of built-in storage. As the name implies, it gives you just the essentials, free from any bloatware of any kind, even if you pick up the version that runs on Sprint in the US. There are no carrier applications which are pre-installed on this device. Now, on the latest version of Android 9.0 Pie, it supports all the gestures, including swiping up to have access to the app drawer, as well as if you want to multitask between applications, I can push upwards halfway to basically juggle between currently running applications. The experience is, again, extremely similar to current Pixel phones. So as a whole, the UI navigation experience is extremely impressive and still, even 2 years later, remains smooth without any problems. Let's take a close look at the camera performance first, and as alluded to, it's probably one of the weakest links of the Essential phone, especially if you compare it to, say, the Google Pixel, but it definitely is one of the best that you'll find now for only $150. The app interface is extremely simple and easy to use. We can simply capture a black and white image with that secondary camera sensor. We're also able to capture a portrait, which is a bokeh effect, using that secondary sensor for depth information. Under the main photo mode, you're able to toggle on and off the auto HDR. Now again, it is very simple, so you won't find even filters on this device. Also, you won't find, say, a beauty mode for the selfie camera, which by the way is 8 megapixels. So if you are looking for those fancier modes and effects, you probably have to resort to a third-party application. I'll point that out, especially since the community support for the Essential phone is pretty strong, and folks have managed to port the Google camera application and install it on this device, giving you similar software tricks as you would find on the Pixel, such as night vision and night shot, and that dramatically improves the performance of the camera quality. So, with a little bit of patience, or even relying on its original application through its countless software updates, the camera now is perfectly usable, especially for the low price. The quality has definitely improved by leaps and bounds compared to firmware version 1.0. Using Auto HDR, you can see it's managed to still retain the light texture of the sky, but still give us plenty of shadows and accurate looking colors. Even as, again, the light starts getting a little bit dimmer, the Auto HDR effect still kicks in and manages to produce, in my opinion, very fine looking results, again, for a sub $200 phone. So, the camera, I think, is no longer a reason not to pick up the smartphone here in 2019. Now, one of the weaker elements of the Essential phone would be its battery life. It has only a 3000 milliamp hour capacity pack, which for a device that has a 2K panel is not going to be the strongest. The device will still last you through a full days of use, but don't expect it to be able to be an endurance king. For the weight that the phone commands, I would have definitely loved to see it have a slightly larger 3500, if not 4000 milliamp hour pack. Some reflections would be that the overall experience of watching videos, browsing YouTube for instance, or social media is a joy on this phone because A, the processor is extremely fast, making scrolling and interacting with the phone is still lightning quick. Second of all, the screen is truly immersive, as you can see there. The sound quality is also surprising. Even though it's a mono speaker and I didn't really expect it to be that great, it packs a good amount of volume and actually some depth and bass that are better than I originally expected. If we're doing a quick web browsing test here using the desktop version of a site like Amazon, the page still loads back very quickly and without any issues. It definitely makes interacting with web pages still, again, very refreshing and immersive because of the small bezels. Now, one thing to keep in mind, however, is I did find the reception quality of the Essential phone to not be as strong, and that does mean that sometimes when you're loading back a web page, you do have to wait for a split second longer, not because the processor can't handle it, but because you have to be a little closer to your reception source. Installed applications, again, are bare to a T, so you really won't find anything outside of the standard apps from a install of Android. The only slight gesture which is different from other Android phones that I've seen would be the ability for you to pick up the phone to give you quick glance notifications without having to wake up the display, so to speak. So for example, if the phone's display is now completely turned off, using its accelerometers, it can quickly give me the time as well as any quick notifications like emails, SMS, or missed calls which pop along. It reminds me of an ambient display mode that you may see on a Huawei or a Samsung phone. One thing that you won't find on here, however, is double tap to wake. Other slight modifications that you'll find here include access to some custom wallpapers, but again, that's pretty much it from Essential's part. But you are able to take a quick look at some of those that Essential have baked in, some of them which are black in terms of their theme and try to disguise the notch. Really, with the Snapdragon 835, there's still nothing that the Essential phone can't handle. It was a flagship of yesteryear, and even today, outperforms pretty much 90% of even mid-end phones, including, say, Snapdragon 660 powered devices like the Mi A2, for instance. So in terms of raw benchmarks and even day-to-day usage, everything is still very smooth. I guess gaming is just the last thing to talk about. I would say that, again, it works flawlessly without any issues. You can download complex titles, including Asphalt 9, PUBG, and they will still load back at pretty much the fastest rates that you can get out of a mobile device. So if you are into gaming, again, it does have still flagship level specifications. The only thing to really quickly note would be, again, because it doesn't have, say, 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is still pretty crazy for a phone, by the way, I would recommend maybe closing out of some of the other applications in the background if you have, tons of games and apps open, just to kind of optimize on the RAM performance. But the overall chipset shouldn't give you any issues at all. Now here's some other kind of quick games here, including 2D titles which load back basically instantaneously, as you can see here. So that's the Essential phone here in 2019. The interesting thing here is 2 years later, I actually like this phone more than the first day that it was released, and that's simply because Essential have been relentless when it comes to pushing updates to this device, giving it the latest security and software updates once they are available, as well as improving the camera performance slowly but iteratively, dropping the price, and now the phone can be picked up for only $150, which is absolutely a steal. Overall, the build quality, the small bezels on the phone, everything still makes it feel very luxurious in the hand even 2 years later, and it truly was a device that I think was ahead of its time, and a bit of a shame that it was so quickly forgotten by the mainstream public after its slightly disappointing debut, because now, 2 years later, I think it still has held up incredibly well. You can learn more details in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Essential phone revisited here in 2019.